I'm kind of well poised to sort of jump into that with my self-published book because I've had a lot of experience and I kind of have figured out what works for me and maybe what doesn't.
Welcome to Modern Publishing. I'm Victoria, author, editor, and the owner of Blue Pen, and today I'm on with Michelle Cox. Now, Michelle is the author of the Henrietta and Inspector Howard series. Her historical fiction books have won more than 60 international awards, so she's doing pretty well for herself. She's also published 7 books with a hybrid press and is now jumping into self-publishing. So, Michelle, I'm really excited to talk to you today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Absolutely. So to start, I'm really interested. What prompted this change from your hybrid press into self-publishing?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I'm with She Writes Press, so they are based in Berkeley, and they, as you said, they're a hybrid press, and I love them. They're great. I love what Brooke Warner, the publisher, is trying to do, and the way she champions women and sort of creates that space for them. And so I love everything about the press. It's just that it's very, if you're trying to make, I think, a career out of writing, it's really hard to do because it's so cost prohibitive. So, and the price keeps going up every year, and I totally get that, but it's really hard to make that money back. And then on top of it, you're trying, to pay for publicity or marketing, and I found that it's really, really hard to do that without, I think, running ads, like Facebook and Amazon ads. And since I'm with a hybrid press, similar to traditional publishing, we only get a statement 4 times a year. So it's really, really hard to tweak those Facebook and Amazon ads in order to make the changes you need daily to make a profit. So I can run ads. I mean, I've spent thousands of dollars on Facebook ads, but I have no idea if they're really working because I don't have that sales data. So I think for me, it was just a decision like, I really do want to make a career out of this. I really want to try to make a living out of writing, which I know is really hard, but I think that this is my best chance. That doesn't necessarily mean, I am going to do it, but I think it's my best option at this point.
Yeah. So I imagine that must be really difficult. Marketing and trying to market and not being able to see whether it's actually converting or not.
Right. Yeah, it is really difficult. And I think that, I think a hybrid press is great if you have one book in you or maybe a couple of books kind of like on your bucket list. It's a great place to shepherd you through that process, and you come out with a beautiful book. It looks traditionally published. You are sold into libraries and bookstores. So it's a great way to get a book out there. But if you're, like I said, if you're trying to build a career, I think, I don't know. It's a little bit harder to do.
So I'll be honest, when I am talking to new authors specifically, I generally shy away from even mentioning hybrid presses because it is so hard to distinguish between a hybrid press and a vanity press.
Exactly. Yeah.
What kind of drove you to choose that hybrid press route to begin with?
Well, that's a good question. So, I'll try not to bore you. Okay, so I initially wrote a novel before my Henrietta and Inspector Howard series. So I wrote this novel, and it was really just sort of a hobby project. It wasn't really to get published. I just wanted to see. I was an English major, hadn't done anything with it, and then in like 2013, I had this chunk of time open up, and I just decided, why not try to write the novel that you always wanted to write? It's not to be famous, not to get published. I just wanted to see if I could actually mechanically do it. So I wrote this novel, and
friends and family really liked it. They're like, why don't you publish it? I'm like, I don't know anything about publishing. That's not really why I wrote it. They're like, no, you should try. And I'm like, well, okay. So I started researching that. That took a long time. And I queried some agents. Nothing was happening. And I just figured, I'm doing something wrong, obviously. Either something's wrong with the product or something is wrong with my process. So I decided to go to a conference. So I went to the Writer's Digest conference in New York that year. And I actually was really, so I'm like this really newbie noob, I was this bright and shiny, so excited to be there, and I'd written this book. And the feeling that I got was that everybody was very sour on traditional publishing. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I just got here. So there was lots of, lots of negativity. And I just happened to wander into the first session I went to was run by an agent, April Eberhardt, and it was called The 3 Paths to Publishing. And she talked about self-publishing, traditional publishing, and this new way called hybrid publishing. And I had never heard of this. And the more she explained it, I just thought it sounded fantastic. I'm like, this is perfect. And so when I got home, I started doing some research. And one was she had mentioned She Writes Press that she worked with a lot. And so I kind of trusted her based on that. And then there was another one that she recommended. So I went and researched both of them, and I ended up liking She Writes Press much better. And one of the things I think that distinguishes them from a normal, like a vanity press, would be that it's probably lower now, but at the time that I was submitting, they were accepting only 7% of their submissions. So they do vet. So it's not like just because you submit to them, you're going to get a book published. I mean, they are booking out, they're several years down the road now. They have so many submissions, and they can only publish so many authors a year. I think it's 80. So, so I think that's an important distinction to look at.
Yes, that is definitely one of the most important distinguishing factors with hybrid versus vanity is hybrid presses are selective. I would encourage anyone, I know some of our listeners are going to be more familiar with this terminology than others. I would encourage anyone, if you're not sure about what we're talking about here, go find Writer Beware.
Yes.
It is such a fantastic resource. They have descriptions of this terminology, and then they also post about scams and vanity presses, specific ones, so that you can go look. Like I'm looking at working with this company. Let's see if there's anything on Writer Beware about whether I should be concerned.
Yeah, totally agree with that. That's great advice, because they're great. They're excellent.
Yeah. So, okay, so you were with the hybrid press, and now you're jumping into self-publishing. Right. Where are you in that process?
Well, I am. So I've written the 7 books of the series. The 7th book comes out in October, and that's going to be with She Writes Press, of course, and that will be my final book with them. And in the meantime, while I was writing that series, I also wrote 2 standalone historical women's fiction novels, and I queried one of those pretty heavily too, and did not get anywhere with it. So that one has been developmentally edited, super edited by actually an editor that freelances for the Big Five, or I should say the Big Four. So it's in impeccable shape. It's ready to go. And so that is going to be my self-publishing guinea pig. So I have the cover designed. I just got the interior format back today. And so I've got that one is in progress, and that will come out in February. And then in the meantime, I'm writing a spin-off series, a spin-off to my Henrietta and Inspector Howard series. I'm taking one of the characters and spinning that off
and that whole series will be self-published. So that's kind of where I'm going. I also have an idea for a Christmas novella based on my series. So there's a lot that I want to do, and eventually I want to try a historical fantasy series as well.
Oh,
yeah.
Fun. I love books that blend genres like that.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, that's what I like to read. So they're a little bit harder to market, but
Yeah. So what is your marketing plan here with the book that's coming out now? Have you already started marketing it?
Yeah, you mean the She Writes Press book, the final book of the series, or the new one?
Your initial your self-publishing debut. I assume that She Writes Press did some marketing for your previous books as well. Is that correct?
No, so they do not include marketing in their package. They highly encourage all of their authors to hire a PR company to help them. And because we have an Ingram, or what we were with Ingram Publisher Services, but now we're with PubWest. Because we have an Ingram sales team that goes out and sells our books into bookstores and libraries, She Writes highly encourages you to have sort of a PR package in place, because it's just going to make the Ingram sales team push your book further, because you're already there's somebody else helping them do the heavy lifting. So I did have a PR company for the first 4 books of the series. I did number 5 on my own, and then I kind of did sort of an ad lib sort of thing with book 6. So yeah, a lot of the actual marketing though, falls on the author, as is the case with so many publishing paths now, including traditional. So yeah, I feel like I'm kind of well poised to sort of jump into that with my self-published book, because I've had a lot of experience, and I kind of have figured out what works for me and maybe what doesn't work so well.
What is the marketing tactic that you find you get the best return from?
Oh, that's a good question. I would have to say at this point, the thing that I think is really super effective is putting your book on a book tour. So, there's different book tour organizers out there, Susie Approved or Kate Rock Books or TLC book tours. And if any listeners aren't familiar, it's basically a tour organizer has a kind of a stable of bloggers. So, you have to pay for a tour, and that can be anywhere from, depending on what you want and how big you want the tour to be, it can be $400 to maybe $2,000. So you arrange with the organizer, what you're interested in and how much, how big of the package you want it to be. And then the organizer sort of, displays your book, and bloggers, sign on to read and review that book. And then usually, I think in the old days they would blog about it, but now, I don't know, blogs seem to be a little bit dead. So all of these bloggers post about your book on Instagram, and now they're even doing TikTok. So it's fantastic coverage for your book. So not only are you getting a review of your book, which they post to Amazon or Goodreads, but they're posting about your book, and they have literally thousands of followers. So that's thousands of people that that your book is getting in front of, and you can comment and interact with them and follow them, or have them follow you back. So I just think that for the money, it's the biggest exposure that you're going to get to your book, short of doing ads. And you also get a lot of new followers that way. So I think it's worth it.
I love stuff like that. On this podcast, we're talking about the modern publishing industry and what exactly that means. And a lot of the time, that conversation revolves around the different avenues to publication. But then we see something like blog tours that over the years have evolved from, in-person blog tours, which are still a thing for sure.
Right.
But then, or book tours rather, excuse me. But then we went to blog tours, and now the blog tours are going to Instagram, and it's just there are so many small ways that the industry is evolving.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and that there's so many different marketing trends, and I think that that's one of the things you have to sort of try to stay ahead of to be successful.
Thanks to our viewers for hanging out with us today. I hope this conversation has inspired you to blaze your own trail in the publishing industry. The full podcast episodes are available wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for Modern Publishing. You can also head over to bluepinbooks.com/modernpublishing. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment. Happy writing, and I'll see y'all next time.